Welcome to our Sabres Classics Game Night pregame show on our social media platforms, casual and quarantine version, of course. Brian Duff alongside former Sabre Marty Biron. Marty, April 27th, 1994. Where were you?
Well, I was probably at home. I had just returned from playing midget hockey 7.5 hours away from my hometown. So I was living in the family, and then I had returned right after Easter to finish my school year at home. And the Quebec Nordiques didn't make the playoffs that year, so I didn't have to focus on one team. I was focusing on the whole NHL and the playoffs. So my parents and I and my brother probably sat on the couch and watched the game. I like to think that I stayed up to watch the whole thing, but I probably caught the end on the highlight show the next morning.
Well, I can tell you that my news director at the radio station I was working at was not too thrilled that I had stayed up because, of course, my wake-up call time back then was 3 a.m. in Medicine Hat, Alberta, to come in and do the morning news. But knowing that I had an interest in the Sabres, he was expecting me to probably stay up and watch that game, which was being shown on TSN. And you know what? The series is interesting for so many reasons. I think the Sabres that year were so much better than what many people remember after the tough start that they had. And for all the talk that there always was about the Devils and their defense, they were actually a very, very good offensive team. So the series started the way many would have anticipated with low-scoring games, but then it changed in games 4 and 5 with a couple of 5-3 results. Take us into that type of experience in a team setting in the playoffs when emotions run higher and perhaps the games become less and less predictable the longer the series goes on. What's it like for players in that environment?
Well, obviously, one good bounce, one penalty, one power play can change the way a series would go and a game would go. But when you look at the New Jersey Devils, they were so structured. It was the trap. Jacques Lemaire and his coaching staff setting up the trap in the neutral zone. So the games were so much different in New Jersey than they were in Buffalo because of the size of the ice. And you look at New Jersey, they created a lot of offense by creating turnovers in the neutral zone, getting on the attack, 3-on-2s, 3-on-2s, 2-on-1s. And that's really how they were able to be such a high-scoring team. So they create offense from the defense. And I remember when I played and we were in the playoffs, you do so much video and you break the team down so much. But New Jersey always seemed to find a way to keep their structure and not lose it because teams would have caught up to them. So that was one thing about New Jersey of the mid-90s that was really hard to play against because they never changed their game and nobody could really break through that trap in the neutral zone.
No, and it was the early stages of this. It was the first year under Jacques Lemaire, but they were the second highest scoring team, and they had the best goal differential, and Buffalo actually had the fourth best league-wide goal differential. So this was a very, very strong opening round matchup between these two after a regular season series that the Devils had taken 3 of 4. Now, injuries are always, noted at times like this. The Devils going into Game 6 didn't use Bernie Nichols or Corey Millen, who were their 6th and 5th leading scorers respectively, but Buffalo was playing without LaFontaine and Craig Simpson. And that was basically their story all year long. And unfortunately for Simpson, he never really was able to play up to his capabilities as a Sabre. But you're missing 2 big offensive pieces on both sides. What's it like and how much did you enjoy in those pressure moments, seeing lesser known teammates, if you will, rise to the occasion?
Well, you look at the history of the National Hockey League playoffs, and it's always the underdog, maybe the less appreciated players that step up. Maxim Talbot, right, scoring 2 goals in a 2-1 win against Detroit to win the Stanley Cup. Mike Rupp, game-winning goal with New Jersey Devils early in his career. So it always seems to be the guy that nobody talks about. So I loved it. I mean, I remember playing in the playoffs with the Philadelphia Flyers, and R.J. Umberger had an amazing series against the Montreal Canadiens the one year. Brian Campbell, his hit against Umberger was one of those where you never would have seen that out of Soupy. So there's a lot of the unknown that comes through. One thing, though, in that series that you had to know was Dominik Hasek versus Marty Brodeur. And Marty was in his first season in the National Hockey League, and Dom was well on his way to Hall of Fame career at that point. So those were, to me, the 2 biggest pieces of both teams. So missing LaFontaine, yes, that's a big hurdle for the Sabres to come over. But in the playoffs, role players usually step up to play their roles.
All right. Well, you've touched on the netminders, and it was really fascinating to know that with Brodeur being 22 and Hasek 29, that this was their first opportunity as full-time starters to establish themselves in a playoff series. We'd seen a little bit of Dom in his time with Chicago, but even the previous year in the Mayday moment when Hasek won that game, they went right back to Grant Fuhrer for the next round against Montreal. So this was a really, really neat goaltending matchup. So why don't we close out this portion of the pregame, as we often do on MSG, with one-timers.
Love it. Love it,
Okay,
Duffer.
so we're ready for that. Best attribute of Martin Brodeur that you would love to have had in your game.
Well, I'd like to say the puck handling because he was so good at it, but I think I was pretty good at handling the puck as well. But the biggest thing with Marty was his ability to read the shooters and know exactly where they were going. So you'd come down the wing and you'd see a big hole on the glove side, and Marty was baiting you to shoot there. And he would react to the shot, knowing almost beforehand where it was going to go. So he was such a reactionary goaltender. When everybody went butterfly, he stayed on his feet. So I would say his ability to, or the quick reflexes maybe to make saves, that's one of the things I wish I would have had that Marty did have.
Okay, best attribute of Dominik Hasek that you would love to have had in your game.
How about a slinky for a spine, right? Remember the commercial, the MasterCard commercial? So I would definitely would have wanted that. His ability to be flexible, to flip, the legs are going either way. To me, like, I was not a very flexible goaltender. I was pretty stiff. I played within my structure, and you'll see in this game, there's a couple of saves that you wonder, how does his legs do that? And that is one thing I wish I could have been better at.
Does tonight's game, Game 6, opening round 1994, feature the best goalie of all time?
Absolutely, and I think he plays for the white team. It's the Buffalo Sabres, wearing white at home, and that's Dominik Hasek. I always said I think he is the best goalie of all time. Patrick Roy, Marty Brodeur, Ken Dryden, Vladislav Tretiak, when you look at the international competition, could be in that conversation, but for me, Dom is the best.
All right, Marty, what are you doing throughout the rebroadcast tonight of our Sabres Classic?
I will be live and very active on Twitter, answering questions. We are gonna, break down some plays in the way that we can do it over Twitter, and I'm gonna put my analyst hat on, and hopefully I can enlighten people with some of the things that were happening in 1994 in the NHL at that time.
This is great, and it's just the beginning for our Sabres Classics, and looking forward to doing many more of these pregame shows and drop-ins throughout the rebroadcasts as the weeks go on. Marty, great stuff, and of course, folks at home, Sabres, Devils, the marathon that was Game 6 in the opening round of 1994 Stanley Cup playoffs airs tonight in Sabres Classic form beginning at 8 on MSG.